Welcome to Thinking Bros. I'm Chris.
And I'm Alex.
We're hopefully in the top 3 of your favorite corner store philosophers trying to figure out life one conundrum at a time. And today we're going to be starting off from our opening segment with the Marshed Mallows study. And of course, Alex is going to explain that. And then we're going to be moving on to Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. You want to get us started on the Marshed Mallows study?
Sure. I don't know which direction you want to take this, so I'll just give a general introduction, I guess. So when it comes to the Marshed Mallows study, of course, the study consists of a researcher coming into a room, placing a marshmallow in front of a child, leaving the child alone with the marshed mallow, explaining to the child that if, when the researcher leaves for 5 minutes, the child succeeds in not eating the marshmallow, then when the researcher comes back, the researcher is going to give the child another marshmallow, so they'll have 2 marshmallow. So it's sort of a test of self-control and to see if the child can resist the temptation of being alone in a room with a marshmallow in front of them for 5 minutes and not eating it. And I guess, well, people take a lot from it, right? One of the points that child development researchers take is that is some of the strategies kids use to avoid distress, because basically it's very distressing to have the marshmallow in front of you and not eat it, especially when you're, an impulsive child. And so some of the strategies they use, like looking away or sort of singing to distract themselves, but I don't think that's the direction we're going today. We're going to talk about something else.
Yeah, well, specifically the phenomenon is called delayed gratification, and the interesting thing about that is, I'm guessing it's not the original study by Walter Mischel, but it's a follow-up study, longitudinal one, that found that kids who had better delayed gratification, aka they statistically were able to delay the one marshmallow while it's sitting in front of them. For example, it's one of the variations of the study. Sometimes the marshmallow wasn't in front of them, to get to in the future, right? And a lot of principles in life, it's easy to see how it can influence you to be, more successful person. For example, investing is specifically that, right? You could have that $5,000 thing right now, or you could invest that $5,000, and in 5 years it would be at $10,000, whatever.
However finances works.
Yeah, just with the steady 0.5 rate per year growth, of course. Now, there are a lot of limitations in this study, like they only tried the marshed mallows, not other types of mallows. Of course, the big thing is that it was done on Stanford kids. I think it was done on Stanford staff kids, something like that. And that's the big limitation here, because, again, of course, one of the modern criticisms to that is that it's only biased towards rich kids in a good position in life, right? And I think an article by The Atlantic, it will be linked in the description, but an article has come to challenge that. Let me read what it is. So, a recent study challenges the popular belief derived from the famous marshmallow test, which suggests that a child's ability to delay gratification predicts future success. The recent restaging with a larger, more diverse sample, blah, 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 found limited support for this idea. Instead, it proposes that a child's capacity to resist immediate marshmallow temptation is heavily influenced by their social and economic background, which in turn strongly correlates with long-term success rather than sheer willpower. Essentially, all it goes into is the fact that rich kids' delayed gratification will inevitably be more
beneficial to their lives?
No, not beneficial to their lives, but more developed. Specifically because in their situation, if their parents tell them you will have a marshmallow, it's much more likely that they will, right? The rewards are more certain in their lives. So they've learned that, they've learned patience because they know it will come. Whereas you put a marshmallow in front of a poorer kid who doesn't get those things as often, or maybe sometimes their parents promise them, I don't know, Disneyland, or maybe they just lie sometimes to comfort them for upcoming good times, and they don't get that, and they learn that that's not something that is certain, which is why it's much harder to control your impulses.
Okay, but I mean, I'm not sure how
it disproves the study, right?
Yeah, how it disproves the first study. Okay,
that's why I brought it up.
Because
yeah,
what I would say about it is, look, the SES, socioeconomic status, may be an even better predictor of life success than ability to delay gratification. But when we look within a population, within the population of Stanford staff's kids, you see the differences between people that are able to delay gratification more and kids that are less able to do so, and you see a difference in life outcomes in that. And so that's, a valid finding. The fact that socioeconomic status is a stronger predictor does not disprove the first thing, and, well, it isn't surprising, but yeah.
And again, also, even if it wasn't just for the Stanford and it was true across everything, it's not one of those like beginner mistakes of correlation versus causation with, saying that an increase in ice cream sales equates in higher crimes.
Shark attacks. I think that, well, it's because it's summertime, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think
anything in summertime.
I think more ice cream sales equals crime, and then they explain it through when it gets hotter or something like that. Like in the summer, there are more crimes, and also
they explain that. Yeah. Well, basically, the classic example is just of correlation does not equal causation. It is a fact that when ice cream sales go up, shark attacks or crime goes up. But that's just the fact that it's summertime and that ice cream gets bought more in the summertime and there are more shark attacks in the summertime. So it doesn't have to do anything with a link between. Yeah,
and they think this is this aha moment of, hey, Walter Mischel didn't consider, like, just as any 1980s psychology researcher, he was focused on rich white kids, but realistically, it's much more useful to focus on the Mischel finding than what they've found, because now they've said the only thing they've proved, and this is exactly what I mean by this modern psychology being completely useless, is they've gone through all this thing and all this financing, and all they've come up with is higher SES kids, which means socioeconomical status, have better life success than those that don't have high SES. Like, okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say just it's completely useless, but it doesn't have to, like, it doesn't disprove the first study. And
importantly, but also it engages in what psychology now often does, which is just take an intuition that we for sure know to be true, and then, subject it to these rigorous scientific methods, and then they say, well, okay, sure, you might have thought that was true, but now it's scientifically proven. Whereas, like, you could have not wasted 6 months to say rich kids will do better in life.
I'm not sure what that study is even. Like, did it find that higher socioeconomic? It's the way you described it is not what's written on the page, right? It's you like read about it somewhere else, because I haven't read about it. But does it find a link between socioeconomic status being higher and delayed gratification being higher for those kids?
No, specifically no. Instead, the recent study with larger, more diverse sample found limited support for this idea. Instead, it proposes that a child's capacity to resist the immediate marshmallow temptation is heavily influenced by their socioeconomic background.
Yeah, I mean, what does it mean, find limited support for that idea?
Well, that's specifically if they took I'm guessing they actually took the delayed gratification and tried to correlate it to future success.
Well, I guess that would be something then.
Non-finding. Well, yeah, I guess, but
it would just be the finding that socioeconomic status is a better predictor than ability for delayed gratification, right?
I guess here they say it highlights that a child's circumstances such as socioeconomic factors play a more substantial role in shaping their lives than previously acknowledged. Yeah, I already acknowledge it. Like, I don't know. It seemed, I think they think that they found something, but they haven't. And also, I'm guessing it's cool to disprove classical studies, but it was published in around 2018. But let's get to the actual study, right? What's interesting here is, also, I was going to say, it's much more useful to focus on delayed gratification, because even if it's not the very, very initial cause of future success, it's definitely something that you can manipulate, right? You can train, let's say, through public education, you can maybe integrate these things in the system for kids to develop delayed gratification specifically, not based on their socioeconomic status, because that's much more useful than just being like, well, hey, we've correlated future success to how rich their parents were. Now what? Right? Like, what? Are we going to give them money? No. So, okay. what's the next step? And the next step is for sure determining things that are useful. For example, delayed gratification as a characteristic. For example,
Well, I mean, inevitably, either way you go, you get into politics and to like social policy, like science informing social policies. Does there need to be more focus in school reform and information for kids about delayed gratification and, you know, education including delayed gratification training, or should that money that would have been allotted to that go into, I don't know, fixing poverty?
yeah, I'm not sure it takes the same budget, let's just say, but
Sure, yeah.
it doesn't matter. It's not about social policy. It's more about, again, this podcast is reasonably for the people who are listening to this podcast. Therefore, it means that it's just about how specifically can people use this information to make their lives better. And, you know, if you believe William James and the like, doing anything is a muscle, and the brain has an insane capacity of associating things to one another. And of course, if whenever you have an impulse, you don't deny it to yourself, well, your brain is going to learn to do specifically that. Now, I understand how coming from a background where nothing is sure will make it much more difficult to resist the temptation of the one marshmallow, because you're not, I don't know, you've been trained to not be certain that the two marshmallows are coming. And that's very realistic.
Is that something you're just saying, or does the paper talk about that?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And so, now, specifically what this is not, and I wanted it to be kind of, is a way to resist your impulses, like in the context of an addiction, for example, or something that is specifically bad or just hedonistic. It's very specific. It's not as general as I would like it to be, because it's only about a reward is coming, and a hedonistic one at that, which for kids is fine, right? And I know I will get more in the future. So how useful can it really be to us? Well, impulse control is fine and very, very important. But in this situation specifically, kids know more is coming. So if you think about the money example with investing, that's fine. But if you think about denying yourself, for example, you have an impulse to snack when you know you shouldn't, denying yourself a donut, well, to use these strategies, you would have to know that you will be allowed 2 donuts in the future. But instead, the thing that is at play here is that you're supposed to have 0 in real life.
Okay, but I mean, I'm not sure. The initial finding itself that delayed ability to delay gratification predicts life success sort of goes against what you just said, because it generalizes, right? The ability of the kid to wait for the second marshmallow is equivalent not to delay of a little reward now specifically to get twice the reward later. It's not just that. It generalizes to, oh, I can, you know, not buy a coffee right now because I need to save up money, and later I can save up a lot of money and get something, you know. I mean,
well,
that's the point. The initial finding itself, that's what it implies, right? Is that it's not just specific to like hedonistic rewards delaying now and then getting the double later.
Well, I don't know what you mean by this is what the initial finding finds. It may be what these scientists wanted to find, but if you look at the facts of what was done to determine the findings,
okay,
a kid who was better able to stop himself from eating a ball of sugar now because he knew 2 balls of sugar were coming later did better in life. Like, that's all that is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you were arguing that it doesn't generalize, but the result that, weren't you?
Well, generalize to what specifically? Because what I'm saying is,
you're saying,
if you're saying it generalizes to all impulse control, the thing about impulses, usually as adults when you deal with them, is the alternative to not doing it now is never doing it. Because
but what I'm saying is the finding that how do you get life success by delaying hedonistic rewards, or by delaying something and never getting it?
No, I do mean,
you know what I'm saying?
No, that's why I used the investing example at the beginning, which in my head it makes sense for that investing example. And certainly, for example, your phone, you might squeeze out 1 more year out of your phone and not replace it for that time, and during that time, that $800 that you were going to spend on that phone, you, I don't know, reinvest it in your company or invested into something, and in a year it's grown. That's something that I could definitely see it as applicable. But even then, while the future reward is kind of certain because investment is kind of sound at low levels of interest. Not sure I used the word sound correctly, but it's still a different thing, right? It's not like, oh, I shouldn't get an Apple Watch now because I'm getting 2 Apple Watches later. You see how that would be?
I mean,
I would do that so easily. It's like, yeah, wait a year, I'll give you 2 Apple Watches. Okay.
Sure, but I don't really see your point, I guess, because what your hypothesis would suggest of, limited generalizability is that the kids who were able to delay 1 marshmallow to get 2 marshmallows had no significant effect in life, because that's only an edge case of hedonistic delay, and then you get double, and that doesn't really happen in life.
No. I do think maybe it's bigger, and if we take the finding that it's about SES, and these kids were all good with that, it may be something more general, that, for example, good parenting of impulse control, this is one of the ripple effects of that, where they can delay the marshmallow, but they can also do other things like deny themselves TV time to be more prepared for the test tomorrow. Wouldn't you say it's qualitatively different? Like making
it's different,
choice.
but I'm not saying. All I'm saying, I guess, is I'm supporting that delaying 1 marshmallow to get 2 is a good model for delayed gratification in general, as shown by the results of the study.
Yeah, but again, I agree, but you're using the word delayed gratification. And here, what is at interest for us is kind of more generally impulse control, where it can be very different. You can deny yourself a hedonistic thing now to have a productive thing later that doesn't even feel as good. You can deny yourself a hedonistic thing now to not be guilty in the future, right? These aren't even factors that come into this. Like, they're not going to feel guiltier if they eat they're not going to feel guiltier if they eat the marshmallow while the researcher hasn't come back yet.
They're going to feel guilty? Probably guilty of
failing.
Yeah, against themselves. Yeah.
We've seen the video, though. It's just a lady, she's like, if you don't eat the marshmallow now, I'm going to come back later with 2, okay? So, good luck. And she's like super nice about it. She doesn't frame it in a way where it's like,
no, I don't
eat this marshmallow.
I don't think it's guilt for the experimenter, like against their hypothetical self that could have had 2 marshmallows.
Are they even able to do that? In any case. Yeah. So I do think it's a little bit more limited. I agree that it's a good argument that, well, it's no coincidence that the people who were able to resist the marshmallow did better in life later. That's definitely a fact. What I'm saying is there's maybe something deeper. Now, these guys, whatever journal that was, are saying it's SCS. Sure, but that's not practical, right? Like, I can't make someone richer to make them have better life outcomes. So, okay, let's try to give advice based on this. So what they found very concretely, right? It's mentioned like 10 times. Well, I don't know why they repeat it so many times. And it's that the best strategy to delay this gratification was self-distraction, right? It wasn't even, they say it in a more healthy way, which I call healthy, where they're reframing the situation, reframing a hard situation as easy. Do you remember that quote? But that's not necessarily what it is. For me, I saw it as a little bit of a, suppression. Like, you put it in the back of your mind. You know it's a thing that is bugging you, but you're kind of ignoring it. And to me, that's not a healthy coping mechanism for other things in life. But here, it seems like a viable strategy. And in fact, the best. The kids who were the best at distracting themselves did the best at this task. And also in life. Right?
What was this task specifically? Was it
the marshmallow?
The marshmallow effect. Okay.
The main strategy they used is just started singing, saying la la la. Right?
They mentioned that, though, like the way you keep it in the back of your mind and then you spend the most amount of time just distracted, not thinking about it. But it is in the back of your mind, and from time to time you're reminded. I don't remember. I read this a week ago, but do you remember that passage where no?
Not really.
You remind yourself of it from time to time, just so.
Oh, the goal is kept in mind.
Yeah, you still have to. You still have to know what you're delaying your gratification for, right?
One of the interesting things was as well, it didn't matter if the marshmallow was in their perception, well, before their eyes, or in their mind. So as long as they were able to keep their mind from it, it wasn't even more difficult to keep their mind from it when the marshmallow was in front of them or not in front of them, I believe. So that's pretty interesting, right? Imagine it's your phone and you're working. If you're actually, well, of course, a phone beeping would be a different thing, right? The marshmallow doesn't beep. But if you put your phone on silent, even if you put it in front of you or in your pocket, you don't really need to isolate yourself from the stimulus as long as you're good enough at shifting your mind towards something else, which is pretty interesting. So I guess self-distraction. I have found it that this is the best way for me. When I was going through my rough diet, it was definitely not being next to the fridge. Like if I have access to the fridge, it's over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In my worst times, I could allow myself to go to the kitchen anytime. But whether I am working very intensively on some school stuff or I literally leave the house because that's what it takes, those two things help immensely. Just if you're too busy to overeat, you won't even have the choice to do so. And in my head, the way I see addiction, I don't think that's the healthiest way to do it. I do think the peak of mastering your addiction is being, let's say, an alcoholic, right? You give them that glass of alcohol right in front of their eyes and they cannot take it because they've reframed it so healthily. Now, whatever,
Sure,
that's
yeah.
just a theory, but it just seems right for me. And I think I'm there with food, but it's still useful to use those distraction techniques, and it doesn't feel unhealthy because it's not really repression or denial. It's just, look, my brain already has an unhealthy fixation on something that I don't need, right? I've already eaten my calories of the day, blah, blah, blah. Now all you have to do is offset that effect of your brain's unhealthy fixation. If you're a normal person, right, with no problems, maybe stopping yourself from eating by distancing yourself too far from food would induce something bad in you. But for me, it was a fix because I had an unhealthy fixation on food. Again, with these kids, yeah, self-distraction seems to help a lot. So if you want to stop yourself from doing something, for example, I guess a modern example would be just scrolling on whatever, just plan out your day. I mean, have it full with things you genuinely want to do. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure when you're scrolling, you genuinely want to continue to do that, but with things that you will be proud of at the end of the day, right? That's the thing. If you can look back at that thing and say, okay, I was proud of that, that's what you should plan the day before, and then just stick to it. So again, the interplay between the thinking you and the doing you. Be a good planner. Know yourself enough to plan exactly what you want to do, and then the doing you must have enough discipline to trust the thinking you.
Yeah.
Is that all we can get from that? Yeah. I mean, it's no surprise that being able to control your impulses well leads to future success, right? So it's good. It's good to know.
Yeah, you went, I don't know if I want to say off topic a bit, but I think this paper specifically, as you said, like mentions delayed gratification where there is a reward at the end. And, talking about food that you're never going to get is a bit different. The conclusion at the end of the study is, in order to bridge the delay effectively, meaning succeed in the waiting period between right now and when you actually get the reward, because you're actually going to get the reward, it is as if the subject must make an internal notation of what he is waiting for, perhaps reminding himself of it periodically, but he must spend the remaining time attending to other, less frustrative internal and external stimuli.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly how it approached the diet, though. Like, you think it generalizes to more than marshmallow to marshmallow, right? So you think it generalizes to one type of stimulus to another. And that's kind of how I saw it. I saw no food now, aka dodging the first marshmallow. Healthy body, healthy weight later, right? Yeah. Healthy weight or later. And I guess to remind myself, I would weigh myself and see myself lose the weight. And not that I approached it in the most healthy way. And for the rest of the time, I would do things that would take my mind off it, like school, work, and walking and running, right? So
yeah, but I think just in general, the lesson for life is help yourself get rid of bad habits. You don't expect that willpower will get you all the way through it.
That was a big thing, right?
You can, in your best moments, when you feel the most motivated and you have a boost of energy, and you'd be like, oh, if I had cake in front of me, I wouldn't eat it. Those are not the moments that matter. The moments that matter is the moments where you're the weakest and you need support from your environment, support in the form of the absence of temptation, right? You just need to help yourself, because whether you want it or not, sometimes you're weak.
Yeah.
Right?
I do see like the peak of a person or morality as a person who's perfectly disciplined, but it's
But the thing is, when you have
less
like
realistic.
overwhelming desires,
Yeah.
which is the case
Like
when
addiction level,
when you have
right?
an addiction, it's overwhelming. You know, the stoic person that you're imagining in your head that can resist temptation isn't drawn that much to like the food or the alcohol.
Well, yeah,
as the
but
addicted person.
that might be the result of work on that.
Yeah, no, it is the result of work of that. But
Yeah.
I'm saying the internal state of the alcoholic versus the stoic person is not the same. The alcoholic
Right.
desperately wants the alcohol,
Okay,
and
so-
the stoic person is sort of fine, right?
Yeah.
Wants it a little bit.
So it's still on the table that the peak of morality is kind of this self-discipline, but if you had to start somewhere, it would definitely be at self-distraction.
Yeah,
Certainly.
yeah.
Okay.
And you
cool.
can work yourself towards that. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, so let's move on. Unfortunately, no sponsor today.
No sponsor, yeah.
Well, they didn't like. I think they had copyright issues. So just for next time, we may get another one. Yeah. Notes from Underground. So let's just frame this really quick. Dostoevsky, greatest writer, psychologist, man, father, brother, ever, as rated independently on a Likert scale.
By people?
By people.
We're so stupid.
Dude, we wanted to say by people at the same time. I thought about it. Well,
Yeah, the problem
right
is
when
you thought
said
about
it.
the joke for a little bit after you said your... Okay, anyway.
I thought of the joke now.
Okay.
So, and he wrote Notes from Underground, which is essentially quite a disturbed man, but a man that he himself says must exist.
Must exist.
Something like that, right? Like, there is a man
inevitably
who is, like,
does exist and also must exist.
Yeah. Exists in society. And I think what that means partially is also, it's like evil, right? It's not only, okay, I'm going to represent evil. There is a little bit of that in all of us. And that's why it's important, right? And the more you relate to this man, I would say the more cause for disturbance there is. But what he essentially is a completely asocial person who's been hurt by society quite a lot and who is now living underground and very isolated and writing about, having a philosophical crisis about how everything is useless. I am misrepresenting it a little bit, but here that's the context.
Yeah, and a lot of themes brought on here, and yeah, it's always hard to know what Dostoevsky's position is, which is why it's interesting to have it in narrative form and not as an I don't know how some philosophers do it as an expose or a long text about their philosophy and how they think. No one really knows what Dostoevsky thought because he had so many characters representing so many probably parts of himself that are all interesting, and I think he especially in Brothers Karamazov, right? He plays the devil's advocate for everything. Like the three brothers have diametrically opposed views of life, and he fights for each of their points of views and represents them as strong as he can. And
Yeah, I think here the man is definitely represented negatively, but also Dostoevsky knows way too much for that not to be a part of him.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
he knows way too much.
He argues for it so well. Like the conclusion is obviously, and the underground man himself admits is wrong, but he's like, I can't come to another conclusion. This is how I should live life.
Yeah, fascinating guy.
Okay, so just what can we say about him? Okay, I guess he's well educated. He was an official for the government. He's now retired. He was working at the job, and then he got inheritance money from one of his relatives dying, and he instantly quit his job as soon as he could, as soon as he didn't have to take it. And he's educated. He thinks he's smart. He probably is smart, maybe smarter than average, but he sort of despises himself. And this passage captures intellectual's struggle, I guess.
Let's do
Well,
beginning of quote and end of quote so everyone knows when we start talking and when we finish.
So, beginning of quote, he says, I emphatically repeat, ingenious people and active figures are all active simply because they are dull and narrow-minded. How to explain it? Here's how. As a consequence of their narrow-mindedness, they take the most immediate and secondary causes for the primary ones, and thus become convinced more quickly and easily than others that they have found an undisputable basis for their doings, and so they feel at ease, and that, after all, is the main thing. For in order to begin to act, one must first be completely at ease, so that no more doubts remain. Well, and how am I, for example, to set myself at ease? Where are the primary causes on which I can rest? Where are my bases? Where am I going to get them? I exercise thinking, and consequently, for me, every primary cause immediately drags with it another, still more primary cause, and so on ad infinitum. Such is precisely the essence of all consciousness and thought. So I think, I don't know, we both went through this phase of, I think that this is like a phase we talk about of like adolescent nihilism, when you come into consciousness and you think you're all smart and you can't determine the ultimate cause for anything, and so you just stagnate and do nothing because you can't explain the world to yourself.
Yeah, and I also it's very relatable for me. I definitely used to hate others because it came so easy to them, right? People who, when I was 16, 17, I saw just people who just, woke up, went to school, did their work, played their video games, and went to sleep with a smile on their face. And I hated that because I knew they never had to answer the questions that I had to answer, right? It's like, oh, you're so lucky to be dumb. You don't even doubt that what you're doing has no meaning and blah, blah, blah.
But I think eventually what you realize, that you were getting to that, I was interrupting you, but eventually what you realize is, who's really stupid here? Is it the person actually acting, or is it the person thinking for 2 years and doing nothing, having done nothing because they're thinking about their philosophical inquiries for 2 years?
Certainly, but I do see it as levels. I don't see it as, black or white, because I'm a very gradient person.
Yes,
right? Gradient
always.
Motivated.
He's known for that.
Yeah, gradient motivated person. And I see it like this. I see it in 4 categories. It's stupid enough to just be a sheep of life and never ask yourself why you're doing stuff. And I know a lot of people who are in that, and fine. Then you wake up one day and you're like, wait, is this all a game? Like, that if there's anything that re-sparks my existential nihilism, remember that light it's a light bulb that's been on for 50 years in a fire department or something? Like
I've heard about that.
And you know how we figured out the technology to make light bulbs never break like 60 years ago, but because of market saturation, we now just play this game of, hey, let's make something that breaks every 2 years and you'll come back and buy it because the market can't be saturated, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it from a philosophical view of like, oh, we just want society to advance, but we're making light bulbs that specifically break just so we keep playing this game, that is a little bit wild to me. So, so there's that level. And then, okay, I said 4, but I think I mean 3. Then there's the level where like, okay, I admire what this guy's having, right? The stupid guy. I wish I could reach that level, but I can't ever stoop down to that level, right? I can never, a lot of smart people, and even he says it, is, oh, they're so lucky to be dumb. I wish I was ignorant, right? Ignorance is bliss. But when you realize that, okay, that's my desired state, can I reach it through intelligence? And the way to do that is our strategy, which is the best strategy. And it's to say, well, okay, if nothing matters, then why are you alive? And if you choose to be alive, but if nothing matters, being alive and being dead is the same thing, but being dead is less effortful, right? So why don't you go there? Oh, okay. So you do choose to be alive. Now let's build on top of that, because otherwise it would be hypocritical, as you say, to be alive and also nihilistic. Well, look, you've chosen this state of existence, which, well, according to your arguments, is equal to that one. well, either go into that one, don't quote Alex on that, or we got to do something. And this is where you get out of the state, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think I approach it sort of like in a humble way of, I can't know the goal of life, but as you just explained, if my intellectual inquiries lead me to believe that death and life are equal, then somewhere along the way, my intellectual inquiries, go wrong. I don't know something. That's how I see it. There's something I don't know because I desperately want to be alive. I would never even think of myself. And so, I have this desire to keep on living. And so there's something I'm missing. My rationality is missing something. Yeah.
And that something is, I mean, it doesn't even have to be that deep. It just has to be, okay, well, look, I understand that the universe doesn't care about me. I'm an ant on a burning rock, blah, blah, blah. But now that I've chosen to live, what fun stuff can we do? And this is where you tune out hedonism. You realize collectivistic living is the best living. Purpose, public profit. So, yeah, I think that's pretty well concluded, yeah. Next passage.
Well, these are long passages.
Yeah, maybe can you read a quote from it or something just to remind myself like what we're talking about?
A quote from the passages?
Yeah, beginning or end of quote.
Okay.
Quote.
Beginning of quote. But these are all golden dreams. Oh, tell me who first announced, who was the first to proclaim that man does dirty only because he doesn't know his real interests, and that were he to be enlightened, were his eyes to be open to his real normal interests, man would immediately stop doing dirty. Oh, the babe. Oh, the pure innocent child.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
It is a hard one. So I didn't read the whole passage. The whole passage, and you sort of see it in the beginning, is talking about sort of all-encompassing philosophies that try to consider and get to the bottom of human desire and try to figure out how to live human life the best. And the underground man goes pretty hard against that. He sort of despises it in the sense that it's you can always bring an argument against it, and you can see it when you talk about consequentialism or deontology. When you try to get rules, there are always exceptions, and the thesis the underground man comes to is that
they're all missing one factor.
Right? It's pretty intuitive, right? To say, okay, let's consider all human interests, all human desires. What they want is happiness. Okay, how do we get happiness? Consequentialism, hedonism, blah, blah, blah. Deontology, we want, justice or a just world. This. They're all missing one fact. And the underground man says that interest that they're missing, that humans will always want, and that sort of always contradicts all other intuitive interests, is our free will, our ability to do whatever the hell we want. I think the point is, that's another quote from the book. 2 + 2 is 4 for the underground man represents these systems of, tabulating life and figuring out everything. This is how you should act. This is how you should act. And the underground man sort of gets angry at that because he doesn't understand how these people can try to arrive at these conclusions and not realize that if you can get as close as you want to figuring out all the interests in the end, just to not be a robot and a key on a piano that's controlled by something. Humans will go crazy just to assert their free will, and that resonates with me. I don't think that if you figure out exact human interests, I don't think that's possible. I don't know if I'm articulating it well. I've been talking for too long.
It's fair because even if you imagine something like, my tyrannical island that I, developed a perfect philosophical system where I guarantee that everyone can be happy. If you even admit that that's possible,
mm-hmm.
The intuition of that thought experiment, which I hope won't be a thought experiment one day, is I am definitely not coming to your island, you tyrant, right? Even if you promise me to make me happy, not even... But even if I can promise you and give you insurance, because people want freedom at their core. And I wrote a blog post on it not that long ago, and the thing that I identified is very interesting. It's evolutionarily, how does this freedom of will make sense? And I just thought of an answer, but if you think about it like this, right? If our parents, let's say we're an adolescent, our parents tell us, historically, that this berry is poisonous, why would an adolescent go and do the badass thing of trying the berry just to prove that they're free with the risk of poisoning themselves? How does it make evolutionary sense to rebel up against these customs, even if you are told that this is the best thing for you? And as the underground man points out, we are aware that they're the best thing for us, and we still do the other thing.
Mm.
So what is that other thing? The free thing, right? The thing that no one told us to do. Now, my fix to that would simply be, and it's not that satisfying, and it's simply that we're evolutionary programmed to be like that because of the requirement of novelty and innovation. You know how kind of meiosis works, right? Like gene crossing over, blah, blah, blah. A lot of randomness happens. I mean, even, the sperm cells are in millions. Everything must be random. If evolution were optimized, then would it probably like be one cell fusing with one cell, and it's the best cell you could ever produce. But it's a lot of randomness, and this is how evolution works, right? It works filtration. And this is the beauty of the thing, right? So if we started off as humans, and ancient Greeks had slaves, right? And no one had the free thought, the revolutionary thought of, hey guys, I think slavery's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We would never be here today. And it's the same thing, unfortunately, that this blessing also happens to be a curse, because in societies where something is believed to be found to be optimal, for example, not killing people, well, there's always a psychopath who's always going to be like, yeah, but it's not wrong. And it's cool to, well, quote me on that, but it's cool to have this, and it's necessary in the sense that it's a necessary evil in the sense that at one point, every person that has achieved something that is good for society now was probably considered evil. Even the fact that the earth is round, the guy was imprisoned,
right,
or probably before that, people were killed for that, right? And now we can do a lot with that, like leave the earth or something like that, right? So I think freedom of will is the most precious thing that a human has, because it's the basis of societal progress. And even if it is purely bad, the people what people do with their freedom of will, well, it's just yin yang, right? Can't be any good people or a stable police force without the big threat of, I don't know, people going around with machetes or something.
I'm sort of in between two positions here, because what I want to say on your thing is it makes sense to me that, the landscape where the human acts always changes, right? Society changes, the conditions, the environment, the culture changes actively, and from people to people differ. And so even if you were to find an answer for right now, an answer for human life, how to live, in the next generation, which is really not that far off at all, it wouldn't be the right answer, and you would have to always change. And there's also epigenetics, right, where your actions and the environment change the expression of your genes, and so your organism itself is changing all the time. And so maybe if you were to find a right answer, it would be okay, it's correct for this second right now, but the next second it isn't, because everything is always changing.
And it seems like a stretch, but literally, if I find a perfect morality for now, but in 100 years the earth is plus 5 degrees Celsius and AI is taken over, and we need fields like AI morality, well, I'm already like past my my date of being valid, whatever. Phrase that awfully, but whatever.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's something constant about human nature, and he wrote this book in the 1800s, and we read it today, and we're captured by it, and captured by the thoughts. It could have been written
yesterday, right?
It could have been written yesterday, as well as it was written for that specific time in Russia. It works for us right now, and we understand it in our society, and we acknowledge that the underground man must exist in all of us, and is me. I am the underground man. Yeah. That's why I'm torn. I agree with you, but at the same time, there's something constant about human nature, and maybe it's less that a perfect solution can be found, but it's only perfect for 1 second, and it's more that it actually never will be found and can't be found even for 1 second, because ultimately free will breaks all these rules. Maybe.
Man, I wish. Yeah, that's a difficult one, man.
Yeah.
I always lose it at free will because I definitely. Dostoevsky is very right that people prioritize it over the right thing to do, and it drives me wild.
There's a whole segment about, call history what you want, call history interesting, call history unfair, but don't call it rational. History is not rational. The things that happen are so human.
I'm gonna cry on camera because Dostoevsky is the best. But
Okay, maybe an easier passage to discuss. The chapter 4 is about a toothache. He starts the segment, and you can explain it because I think you'll remember it. He starts the chapter with, "Ha ha 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 ha. Next, you'll be finding pleasure in a toothache," you will exclaim, laughing. In the book, he sort of talks to us, to the reader, and he says, "Oh, you're mocking me. You're saying, yeah, what is all this nonsense about your philosophy and how you view life? Next, you'll find a toothache pleasurable." And he answers,
yeah, he answers that there's definitely pleasure in the toothache because, when we go around with a certain pain and we just start complaining to people or any other problem, whenever all you do is mention it to someone so they share that anxiety, that brings you pleasure, right? So you cannot say that you don't like your problems, because when you expose your problems to others, you get comfort for free. You get, in a messed up way, you get to make someone feel it as well, and that brings you pleasure. And I don't know how to really phrase it, but that is, I can feel that. I know, because if I am annoyed with something, like an annoying exam or a class that I think I just wasted time, or I broke a toe, I really want to annoy you with it. I really want you to know that is a problem right now for me, and it brings me pleasure. And I get it.
It's sort of like a crybaby in the depths of you that's like, I'm suffering. This is unfair. Why am I suffering? You should suffer too. And
Yeah, and that I like. I don't think about that for myself, but when I realize how many times I mentioned that I have chronic neck pain, I have chronic back pain. It's like, okay, what are you to do with that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, should I just stop? Yes, I should. Yeah.
Yeah. He also makes a bit of a distinction. He says, "I ask you, gentlemen, listen sometimes to the moaning of an educated man of the 19th century. An educated man of the 19th century is what the underground man thinks he is, and I guess sort of who he's addressing and hating on, who is suffering from a toothache, say on the 2nd or 3rd day of his ailment, when he's beginning to moan, not as he did on the 1st day, that is, not simply because he has a toothache, not like some coarse peasant, but like a man touched by development and European civilization, like a man who has renounced the soil of popular roots." That he's quoting some book he hates, as they say nowadays. His moans somehow turn bad, nastily wicked, and continue for whole days and nights.
Yeah, it definitely devolves, right? At the beginning, it's like, okay, I have this new thing. I guess we talk, so I'm going to tell you if I have a broken toe or something. But it definitely devolves, and on the 3rd day, it's like, well, okay, well, you already know this.
Yeah.
The fracture is healing. What are you to do with that now? And all of it is, well, it's occupying my conscious awareness. I want it to occupy yours, but why? I don't get it. Like, I can't explain it. And this is the thing. You guys know from 23 episodes of listening, I always have an answer to everything. And here, Dostoevsky already has 2 things I cannot answer. It's wild. It's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I definitely feel like talking over and over about your pains, unless it's helping someone. I can see, in the first days you might need help, you might need advice. What have you done in the past when you had a toothache? Is there a doctor that I should go see? After that phase has passed and you're in pain, Why do you mention it to the person? You're right. I'm not sure.
But it feels very human because that's a thing. But that's the thing about Dostoevsky, right? He just gets humans. That's how
Pretty crazy, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I guess two more passages. Yeah. He says towards the end of the first part is where he's describing his philosophy, and the part we're analyzing right now. He says, "The final end, gentlemen, better to do nothing. Better conscious inertia. And so, long live the underground. Though I did say that I envy the normal man to the point of uttermost bile, still I do not want him to be him on those conditions in which I see him. Though, all the same, I shall not stop envying him. No, the underground is in any case more profitable. There one can at least... but here too I'm lying. Lying because I myself know, like 2 times 2, that it is not at all the underground that is better, but something different, completely different, which I thirst for but cannot ever find. Devil take the underground." And so he just makes this whole argument, uprooting the basis for some of our beliefs, and then at the end he's like, yeah, but this is trash too. Like, the conclusion is not that you should stay in conscious inertia.
Man, maybe if I read this at 17, I think I'd be much further now, because that is like, I go through waves of relatability with this book, and certain parts are maybe 40%, right? Because he's kind of horrible. But this part is 95%. Like, I've been there. Exactly there. It's like, I envy him, but I don't want to be him because I still want to be smart. But also, I'm going to go into this state of inertia because all smart people should realize that life doesn't matter. But the inertia sucks too.
Yeah,
right? It's like, yeah, man, that's exactly what it is.
And that's what I said in the beginning about Dostoevsky. I think Dostoevsky is just 8 smart people in one or something, or like multiple smart. He just brings the best arguments for whatever worldview you want, and then he's like, nope, that's trash.
Love it.
Very cool. Yeah.
So here I have an Alan Watts quote, and it addresses that, and I love the words he uses, and maybe you will relate. But unfortunately, I didn't find the part where he develops on this argument, because usually Alan Watts takes his time with, he has to put you in a context, and he has some very beautiful metaphors that you're going to hear now, but you have to have a background in Buddhism to even understand. But you'll see what I mean, and you'll see if you understand. Start of quote. "Now, therefore, Zazen, or sitting Zen, is a very, very good thing in Western world. We have been running around for far too much. It's all right, we've been active, and our actions have achieved a lot of good things. But as Aristotle pointed out long ago," and this is one of the good things about Aristotle, he said, "The goal of action is contemplation. In other words, busy, busy, busy. But what's it all about? Especially when people are busy because they think they're going somewhere, that they're going to get something and attain something. There's quite a good deal of point to action if you know you're not going anywhere.
There's quite a big deal to action.
There's quite a good deal of point to action. There's quite a good point to action. There's quite a lot of points to action if you know you're not getting anywhere. If you act like you dance, or like you sing, or you play music, when you're really not going anywhere, you're just doing pure action. The goal of a dance is not to get to a certain point in the dance floor. But this is how we see life, right? We see, house this big, 3 kids, this wife, right? But ultimately, and this is again a Buddhism allusion, we're just a ripple, right? We're just a wave in the ocean of life. And the beautiful thing about the wave metaphor is that a water molecule doesn't move in the X direction on a wave, right? The only thing, you're just a ripple that goes up, and then you go down, and then maybe you might be an oscillation or whatever. So you're just a wave of the universe. And if you think you're going somewhere, you will be disappointed at some point in your journey.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Even being a novice at Zen Buddhism,
unlike me,
unlike Chris, it does seem like a lot of misery and suffering comes from the illusion that there is a goal, the illusion that I'm going somewhere. I need to reach this and this and this, because the question is, where is your goal? If your goal is 1 year down the line, when you are 1 year down the line, what comes after? Another goal, or is it the fact that it's better to live just to live? I think the quote is relatively self-explanatory, but it resonates definitely.
But that's the fix, right? Like, that's our stage 3. There's quite a good point to action if you know that actually you're not doing anything. Like,
yeah.
And it's a preliminary stage. Like, okay, I've gone through phase 2, depressed, blah, blah, blah. Right. That's the truth. I should do the stuff.
And actually, a couple pages earlier, which is the last quote I wanted to say, the underground man seems to agree. He says, beginning of quote, "And who knows, one cannot vouch for it, perhaps the whole goal mankind strives for on earth consists just in the ceaselessness of the process of achievement alone. That is to say, in life itself, and not essentially in the goal, which of course is bound to be nothing other than 2 times 2 is 4. That is a formula, and 2 times 2 is 4 is no longer life, gentlemen, but the beginning of death."
Yeah. Wow. Well, there's nothing better than Dostoevsky to make me redoubt the point of life. But no, I think Buddhism has fixed a lot of these concerns, because maybe I explained this maybe an episode ago or two. Comparing yourself to a bee, right, who's just born and knows it's programmed in their brain that all they have to do is fly all day, look for the most
pollen
appealing flower, deliver the pollen to the base, sleep, wake up, do the same thing, right? Very stoic, very Buddhist. And it's a lot of existential stuff. And the interesting thing about that specifically is that it seems like a primitive thing, right? Imagine you're at the peak. You're smart, right? Just imagine, please. You're smart. You're at the peak of an existential crisis. If someone wise comes to you and says, the point is just to live, actually, you just got to do like a bee, or Marcus Aurelius tells you, no, as a human being, you're supposed to work. You might say, no, that's the primitive view. That's the if you don't question it view. But guess what? It's level 1 and level 3. That's the beauty of it, right? The people who don't question anything, they've been born with the conclusion that you're going to arrive at after years of struggle. And this is what's so fascinating, I think. It's, we've been given reason and the ability to doubt our whole existence, blah, blah. But it's by dropping the ego that comes with that reason that you can say, I'm no better than a bee. I should just go and get the pollen.
Right.
Acquire the pollen.
But maybe that's what makes humans special, is that I think that humans go through there's stage 1, they go through stage 2, which allows them to have these creative thoughts of going outside the box and questioning everything they're doing. But then it's crucial to get back to step 3, which is correlated with step 1, where you actually pass to action and succeed in life with the acquired knowledge of stage 2, but a commitment to life despite your nihilism.
Here's a question: Do you wish stage 2 upon people that are still in stage 1 right now?
I guess yes. Yeah, I'm a non-blissful ignorance type of guy.
Well, yeah, but then it also takes a certain person to be that type of guy, right? Like, it takes a few prerequisites. But what I would say is I agree with you, because I think a lot of people get to stage 2 late in life. You know those people that you hear like, oh, I realize I've been for 20 years in the wrong career? Like, I think that's no joke. And I think that's because they followed in the sheepish way and never doubted anything.
Right.
And it's like, well, no, I'm supposed to do this because my parents told me to, right? Like, I must become a doctor. 7 years of med school, blah, 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 blah. You repay your student debts. You wake up one way, you're like, hey, I wanted to be an artist, right? And if you go through a phase where nothing matters, it kind of makes you drop all societal expectations, because maybe it's a necessary step in the quest to authenticity, isn't it? Like, you must be at stage 3. You can't be authentic if you're at stage 1. If you think you've got it, but you haven't actually ever even developed knowledge of what it is that you can get. do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. You've not arrived at it by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like
You've arrived at it, but it's just because you're blindly trusting what other people have instilled in you.
Yeah, I forget which class it is. I don't know if you've taken it, but there were 4 categories of people. It's people who found their purpose.
You showed me this. I don't think I took the class.
Yeah. It's okay. So let me try to put it clearly. It's a thing where adolescents have searched for an identity and found it, haven't searched, haven't found, found but never searched. For example, it's been given to them. In any case, after this laborious process, the conclusion is the people who are the happiest are the people who have searched for themselves and have found themselves. Seems obvious, but you got to realize that if you feel content right now, there's a certain chance that that contentment has been kind of bestowed upon you and you've never questioned it. And the only danger with that, really, like right now it might be fine, but the only danger with that is one day you'll wake up and it won't be that. And I hate the "and it's too late now" idea, but at some point it's too late now, right? And that would suck, right? Wasting 100 years. So it's almost like there's no good without bad, right? There's no stage 3 without stage 2. Yin yang, me, you. All right. Rating. Hey, Dostoevsky. You know what? I will be humble enough. I'm guessing this is the first time I say something below a 10 for a long time, but 6.
Something below a 10.
Well, below 8, whatever.
Yeah. Okay, let's go with 6. I for the first time I think agree with you in the rating.
Because for the first time it's under 9. But okay. Figured it out, rating 6. If you enjoyed or have feedback, do contact us at thinkingbros@gmail.com or go to thinkingbros.com for our blog, and we will see you next week.
See ya.